All right, hi guys, welcome back. It's almost 10 a.m., so soon we'll be getting our last review session going. Good morning to everybody. Hope you're doing really well and having a good close to the semester with all your classes. So yeah, we got about 3 minutes and then we'll get things rolling. But glad that you guys are here. Hey Kaylee, getting your day off to a good start, I hope. And yeah, feel free if anyone's here to just say hi. Always nice to check in with you guys and see who's here. Feel free to pull up your study guides. Hi, Andy. You've got the document, so we're going to use that to refer to as we go over more of the questions on the list. Yeah, so that's the plan. Just get comfortable, and we got a few minutes till class time. Hi, Sophia. Okay. Cool. Just another minute. Hey, William. Nice to see you there. Yeah, kind of a little sad last meeting, but you guys are just getting started in life, so you got a lot to look forward to, and you got a good stretch of time ahead of you at Chapman too. So just end of one little chapter, but lots of good things coming. Hi, Jessica, Bridger, everybody else. Good to see you guys. Cool. Well, and Jessica, nice to see you too. So we're pretty much at the class time, roughly almost 10. So welcome back, guys, and glad to see you. Today is the last review session, so it's this part 2 of our review session meetings for the final exam on Tuesday. The final exam is Tuesday the 19th from 1:30 till 4 p.m. So just as with the midterm, I'm going to send everybody in the class the test form through Blackboard right at the beginning of the test period time, so just before 1:30. And then you'll have a 2.5-hour window to create your answers and then send them back to me as an email attachment. And then that'll be it for this class. The essays that you guys submitted on Monday, I'm working through those, and they'll definitely be graded this weekend. I'll let you guys know as soon as they're ready so that you can come. We'll send email for your score. You can ask for your score on that or in the whole class, or if you want to see scanned images of any of the previous work, I could provide any of that. But I need another day or so to finish it all up. Certainly, though, it'll be done before the end of the weekend, so you'll have your grades and you can check on them this weekend, so that by the time of the final, you'll know all your scores going in. So that's just a couple of general announcements. When is the final? Tuesday at 1:30 to 4. I have almost finished the grading of your last assignment that you did submit. And now we've got the rest of today to just go over the study guide. So you've got that study guide. You should be looking at the questions. And I'm happy to just help you go through some of the information of whatever questions you want. So just as soon as I see in the live chat, people present a question, and we'll go over it. Okay, so between physicalism and idealism, the difference. All right, good one. So who could tell me just anything about that? And I'll get to that too, Bridger, bad faith. Okay, so let's just start off with the first one from William. Physicalism and idealism. These are two positions in the philosophy of mind. They're two different kinds of monism, right? But the difference between them is which substance the view says is the one that makes everything. So who could give me any detail about what is physicalism, what is idealism? So like, what's the definition of each one? That's something we can say. And once I get something from you, then I'll give you further comment. So who can say the meaning of the word physicalism and the meaning of idealism? So physicalism, everything in the universe is made out of physical matter, even us and our consciousness. Correct. That's true. What's the definition of idealism? Idealism, the other one. What's that view? Idealism, everything is made out of ideas. Yes. So exactly. And Jessica, physicalism, the belief that everything's made out of matter. Idealism is the belief that everything's made out of ideas. Yes. So in the philosophy of mind, there are monists, and those are people who say that everything in the universe is just made out of one kind of thing. Now, there are two branches of monism, depending on which substance is claimed to be the only one. Physical matter, okay, which also should be mentioned in any description of physicalism because it mentions matter. Physical matter is anything that is extended in space. So it's just anything that occupies some part of space. Even if it's the tiniest little piece of extended space, that's matter. And the most ultimate constituent of matter is thought to be the atom. So according to physicalist monism, everything's made out of matter, even you and me and our consciousness and our thoughts, okay? On the other hand, though, there's idealism, which says that the one and only substance is mind. Now, what is mind? Mind is defined as something that does not have extension and is thinking. So something that's like a soul, basically. Not a very, very tiny particle, but something that literally just has no mass or physical substance at all. According to idealism, everything are just thoughts being had by these minds, and there's actually no matter. So two different versions of monism, physicalism and idealism. Physicalism says it's all made out of matter, define what matter is, and mention that it also includes consciousness. And idealism says that everything's made out of thoughts. All right, very good. By the way, most people today that are monists are in the physicalist camp of monism for probably obvious reasons. Idealism is kind of like a relic of a time gone by, but it has some arguments in favor of it. I see, Brian, your question, how many questions are going to be on the final? It's like the midterm. Yeah, it's like the midterm. The midterm, though, I had you, I believe, answer 6 questions. And in this case, since you have 2.5 hours instead of just a 50-minute period, I'm going to have you answer a couple more. So maybe it'll be 8 or so. And then the number of options will be reduced slightly. So I think it'll be like 8 out of 11, something like that. I'll select 11 questions from the study guide, and you have to answer about 8 of them. And I'll use more of the material from the second half of the study guide, but I'll still ask a few from the first. Okay, so I'm going to go in the order of questions that I see. We've talked about 57. The next one in the list here is 76, bad faith. Anybody tell me if you can remember, what is bad faith? What is that concept of bad faith? Just even if you don't have like a full-blown answer, just give me something to go with, and then I can elaborate. Because I know typing takes longer than speech, but if you could just say any little bit of information on that. So bad faith, Nellie. Any situation where you try to place the responsibility for your essence on external factors that you could not control. Okay, like that's like a definition, right? And Brian, you put it differently, blaming our decisions on others. Fair way to put it. Yeah, so the full definition is that one there, Nellie, but it's always good to explain after you give a definition what it's saying. So yeah, according to existentialism, each one of us creates our own essence. Our essence is like our defining attributes, the things that make our identity up. Like what are your political views, religious views, taste in music, film, fashion, food, you know, the unique things that make you the kind of person you are. According to existentialism, you create that from your own choices and from your own free will, but nothing else does. So you're totally responsible for your essence, but that means you got to be totally accountable for it too, and you can't try to put it on anybody else. You got to like own it. So bad faith is when you try to put it on something else. When you say, hey, maybe I'm an angry person, but it's because of the way my parents raised me, or it's because of the friends that I made. So according to existentialism, no, that's just bad faith. That's you trying to divert the responsibility for your own person to something other than yourself. So it's not because of your parents. It's not because of your community or your country or your frat or your sorority that you're the way that you are. It's because of you choosing to be that way. And any attempt to reposition the responsibility for your own character and your own identity to other things would be bad faith. Okay. Now, I see next is Nellie's question, the idea that people have temporal parts. Okay, good. So what is a temporal part? What's the definition of a temporal part? Let's see if you tell me that. A temporal part of an object. What could it be? Just need to know that. So yeah, it is an object at one single moment in space-time. So got to get the word object in there. But you're right, Brian. It's a single moment in space-time considering one object. So like a single individual instant in the timeline of that thing's existence. Like in a photo that's shown of you, that's one moment in your life. And that would be like representing in the picture one temporal part of you. Now in the space-time theory, we are created out of our spatial and temporal parts. The spatial parts are just like the physical parts, like my arm, torso, head, those are the parts of me that take up space. But there's temporal parts which account for why I take up time. And in the space-time theory, the temporal parts are just as real as the spatial parts are. So like temporal parts of you taking this final on Tuesday, they're real. They're real right now. Temporal parts of you back in the day being like a little elementary school first grader, those parts are real too. Just as real as this part of you right now that's watching this. They're all real. All the parts scattered throughout space-time are equally real. It's not like the future ones don't exist or that the past ones are gone. They're all there. Why do you have this present one that's shown to you at a given time? That's kind of mysterious, but they're all there and they're all real and they're equally real. So an object which consumes time and space has got temporal and spatial parts. You watching this right now are not fully present. Some of your temporal parts are. The temporal parts that existed in the timeline between 9 and 9:50 a.m. on May 15th of 2020. But there's all the temporal parts of you before this meeting and after this meeting that also currently exist. So your entire being is the set of all the temporal parts in aggregate total. And you're only ever able to observe one of them at a given time. Okay, so that's temporal parts, guys. It's from Ted Sider. If you want to go back and look at the essay, that's where you'll see it. So next up, number 74, William, Plato's metaphor of the many-headed creature. Okay, so yeah, Plato said that if you think that as long as you get away with it and don't get caught, then doing unjust things can be to your best interest or to your advantage. He says, no, that's not going to be to your advantage. Even if 100% of everybody never knows about it, that still would hurt you. So you cannot benefit from injustice. To make that clear, he gives this example of the many-headed creature, okay? So tell me about the different heads on the so-called creature. One of them is a little bit vaguely described as like having multiple in one section. So just that's something I'll tell you. But what are the basic three heads on the creature? There's one that is blank, another that's blank, and another that's blankety blank. So which are the three kinds of heads here? I'll just wait for your answer. From On the Harmony of the Soul by Plato. Yeah, what are the heads? Three-headed creature. Okay, so I see what you're saying, Sophia. Lion, human, and like a many-headed, it's kind of goblin or a gargoyle, kind of how I described it. But yeah, so good. One of them, I'll start with the many-headed section. There's this section that has like a bunch of little snapping mouths that are hungry, that are like, feed me, and I want to eat. Then there's another head that's just a lion, and another one that's a human. Now, these three different heads are supposed to signify and stand for the three parts of the human soul. So now you got to tell me about that. The many-headed gargoyle section, the hungry part, which part of the soul is that supposed to stand in for? And you could just tell me about all three. This head represents this part of the soul. This other one represents the other one. So tell me which heads represent which parts of the soul, because there's three parts of the soul in this Platonic writing. So you told me lion, human, and many-headed gargoyle. Now I'm asking you to go further and tell me what they each stand for in the author's, metaphor or example. So what do they stand for? Okay, William. The gargoyle stuff, that's the appetites. The lion is the spirited part, and the human part is the rational part. The wisdom is the virtue of the rational part. Okay, good. So correct information from you guys. The many-headed part has the appetites because that's the hungry part. The lion is proud and noble and passionate, and that's like the fighter, that's the spirit. And the human part is the rational element of you, the smart intellect. Now, here's what he said. Imagine that this three-headed creature has those different heads, but to any outside observer, they only see the human one when they look. So just looking at the person, they're just like, hey, it just looks like a human, like any of us. So you can't see that there's anything different than that. But behind the scenes, which others cannot see, imagine that this is the interior situation, that the human head is being attacked from both sides. The appetites are lunging at it, the gargoyle is trying to snap at it and bite it. And the lion is also intimidating and terrorizing the human head. So what that means, if this is what's going on inside, is that the best part of you, your intellect, your reason, has been dominated and enslaved and overpowered by the inferior parts of the soul that are not fit to rule. So you're being overthrown from within by your passions and by your appetites, and your reason doesn't allow itself to be fully expressed or to take its authority. And that's where your soul will be headed if you do bad things. Even if no one else in the whole world ever knows about it, you can't escape the corruption of the soul that's happening inside of you and the harm that's being done to the human part of you, which is the rational part of you. So like, people who do a bunch of bad things and never get caught, they're paying a price inside because they're strengthening the power of their appetites and passions at the expense of their better judgment. And that means that the parts inside of them are at war with each other, and so they are set with internal conflicts. People who do evil things do so because they cannot control their appetites nor their passions, and they therefore are forced to go wherever either of those other things leads, which is a recipe for poorly considered behavior that's likely to harm you. But even if nobody does find out about it, the internal constitution of your soul has become in conflict with itself. So this metaphor is what he uses to explain that idea. The heads are fighting inside. Outside, you just see the human one. Is that good for you? No. Do other people know about it? No. But you're still being harmed because there's a human part of you that you enslave and make weak when you just do whatever your passions or appetites command you to do without the guidance of reason. So people who steal, lie, cheat, they just have appetites they can't control. It's like, why do you want the A so bad that you're going to cheat? It's because your appetite is stronger than your rationality at that point in time. But later on, your rationality is going to have to grapple with the passions and try and turn them back and try and set them right. Do you really want to have these internal conflicts where the parts of you are fighting to decide what's the right thing to do? A person who's good does what they should do, and a person who's doing evil things does not do what they should do. So their reason has to be contradicted by the other parts of them that are not intelligent. So, you're hurting yourself by doing that. That's the argument. I'm giving you as much context and additional comment as I can. So yeah, that's that one. Next up, Lily60. Explain how it is that Descartes accepts that the external world exists. Okay, so one argument he gave was the argument that the mind and the body are separate. After that, though, he also talks about how it seems now very clear and distinct that there really is an external world. So tell me then, why did he say that it seems like there is an external world, that this is clear? What makes that clear? He gave multiple reasons. That the external world seems not to actually be a dream. It seems to be something that's really real, and it's not just all in your head. So what makes it seem like that world outside of you is a real thing and not like a big dream or made up figment of your imagination? Tell me then. Give me some reasons why he thinks that the external world actually is pretty clearly known to exist. He gave at least 3 reasons, which we discussed. These are other clear and distinct perceptions. So one being that the external world exists. What makes that so clear and distinct? Just need a little bit of info from you, and then I can take it to the next step. Or are you just now convinced there's really no external world? Coronavirus things making you doubt reality. Maybe they're just playing a video game. This would be the worst video game though. Anyway, no, not that one, William. You're thinking about the other argument. You're thinking about the argument for dualism that says the mind and the body are separate. That one involves that point. But it does involve it also, I guess, because since God's not a deceiver, he guarantees that clear and distinct perceptions are true. But I'm asking you, what is the clear and distinct reasons that you think the external world exists, which God now is going to make sure won't be false? What are the reasons that it seems clear that the external world does exist? Can't perceive only that which is favored? Correct. Yes, that's one point, Nellie. Since you got that, you must be looking at the right part of the notes. So tell me other things that make it clear. But all of you have the notes, so you don't need to rely just on Nellie. You can help out. What's other reasons which it's clear? I cannot control what I perceive, and memories are less vivid than the original perceptions. Okay, exactly. So look, if the world was just a mental thing that's being made up by your mind, then it would seem like how dreams are, that you have some ability to control the reality. But you can't. So like on this table right now, let's just see a raccoon. Is there a raccoon here? Well, no, but just really try really hard and just make it happen. Obviously, you can't do that, nor can I. So what it seems to be is that the world outside of us has its own independent content. It's not like something that we can just fill in like we're editing a video game. That gives a reason to think that it's real, because I can't just choose what I perceive. Right now, if I look in this direction, I have to visually perceive this table, and I can't just make myself see something different than that. So one thing is, there's no like flexibility with regard to what I perceive in my environment. I can only perceive what's actually there, and I can't perceive things that I would will to perceive. The other thing is, if the world itself was just an illusion, then wouldn't I be able to shape the illusion to my preference? So I could make it so that when I buy a lottery ticket, it's the winning ticket. I could make it so that when, I don't know, something good happens to me, it continues happening over and over again, right? But that doesn't happen in the reality that we're in. So obviously, it doesn't seem like your will is the source that creates the reality around you. And then the third thing is that memories are not as clear and sharp as the experiences that you have in the present moment. So like when you were back at Chapman and we were over there in the Argerios Forum building classroom, if you were looking around, you know, when I would pull down the shades and you could see the sunlight come in, you'd have a very vivid experience of that at that time. But now, as we think back to it, the memory is not as sharp as if it was happening right now. Now, what explains the loss of detail from the original experience to the memory that is formed of it later? Well, what explains it is that when you're having the experience, you're at the campus and you're in the classroom perceiving the objects of the classroom, the tables, the chair, the other students. But now you've been separated from that physical environment, and all you can do is try to recollect those experiences in the eye of the mind, in the mind's eye. But if the world wasn't real, then there would have never really been a physical environment in the first place. It would have been just a dream in the first place too. So there would not be any reason then for the clarity to change from the initial time to the later on time. That can only be explained by having been surrounded by the physical objects which you were then perceiving with your sense organs, versus now when you're not surrounded by those physical objects and you're simply trying to recall them. And there is actually one more that I don't know if I mentioned too much, but I'll throw it out there if anyone wants to use this, if that question was selected. Dreams are episodic, but your experiences while you are awake are continuous. So like right now we're having a review session, and on Wednesday we had the other review session, and on Monday we had the last lecture. So like everything goes continuously, but dreams don't go that way. Like a dream that you have tonight is not like a Netflix series where like it's just the next episode continuing from last week's dream. They're all just random and broken up. So the continuity of your daily experiences while awake is another basis to think that you're having real experiences and not dreams. Okay, so those are all a bundle of reasons why it is clear and distinct that the external world exists. At the sixth chapter of his book, at the end, he says, just kidding about the whole world being a dream. Now that I know that God exists, the clear and distinct things I'm going to say are true. And he says, here are the reasons that these very basic things are clear. Okay, so next one I'm seeing is Brian, you're asking about the ship owner. Yeah, that's a pretty straightforward case. So Clifford says no one should ever believe anything unless they have good evidence. You should never just believe things based on hope or wishful thinking. If you don't believe something based on good evidence, that's wrong. And he says it's wrong always. It's wrong for anybody, anywhere, anytime to believe anything without good enough evidence behind it. To make that example, well, to make that point, he gives this example of a ship owner. So we imagine a ship owner who owns a ship. And the thing is, the ship is really badly damaged and it's unsafe. It's dangerous for them to sail. And they know this. The ship owner knows that 100%. They know it's a dangerous, damaged ship, which in all probability would sink to the bottom of the ocean if it was allowed to leave the port. But he like really hopes that it could make one more successful trip. He wishes that it could do that, right? Because maybe if it did, he could make some money off of it. So here's what's going on. He knows by the evidence that he sees that the ship is dangerous, but his wish is that it could somehow still just make it one last time. So he allows the ship to sail, and he just goes with his hope and his wish that it will work out instead of with the evidence that it probably won't. Now, two ways this could end. One way it could end is the ship does sink. If it does, obviously we know he did do something wrong. He did something wrong in that case because he allowed it to sail, even though it probably was known to have done that, right? To be dangerous and unsafe to sail. On the other hand, though, it might make it to its destination. And if it does make it to its destination, still he did something wrong because he put everybody at that risk. Even if the risk doesn't turn out bad, it was still bad to put people in harm's way, right? So that's his example. It's always wrong to believe things without good enough evidence in every single situation. It doesn't matter what the stakes are, whether they're big or small. This case is one where life and death are on the line, but he says that's always a bad thing to do. So it kind of ties back in a way to Pascal's wager. Pascal says that you should just believe in God because it would be better for you if that's true. But he says, I've got no evidence to give you to prove it. Clifford would say that's not okay, though. You should not believe things just because you hope they're true. That's what the ship owner did, but that was wrong. Instead, you should believe things because evidence indicates that they're true. Okay? So that would be the ship owner example. I mean, I can think of other examples that make the same point. Right? We're dealing with the whole pandemic, coronavirus, right? And so we've been told, yeah, socially distance, stay at home, right? Suppose that there's like some kind of big social event that a person could go to, but they know it's a dangerous risk, that they could get sick by going. So they're thinking, the science and the evidence says this is not a wise choice, but I hope it will work out because I really want to check this thing out. So they go with what they wish, that it'll just not end out with a negative consequence. Now, if they got sick after that, they're going to look back and be like, how dumb was that? I knew that it would probably not work out well because that's what the evidence showed, and I just went with my wish that hoped it wouldn't happen badly. But if they somehow got lucky and, nothing did happen, you could still say it was wrong because they took a risk and they added that exposure of risk to themselves and to other people. So viewed through any example, it's just wrong to believe things only because you're hoping that they're true. You should believe things because the evidence shows they're likely to be true. Okay, so then William. Oh, no, sorry, Bridget, we'll go with you first. What is existentialism? Okay, so existentialism, the philosophy of existentialism says something precedes something else. So I just need you to tell me about that point. What precedes what in existentialist thought? Something comes before something else. It's a very basic statement that's really like a core of, so existence precedes essence. Existence precedes essence. That's right, William. Now, what is the essence of something? And what does it mean for something to precede something else? That'll be the next thing to say. So, you would start by just mentioning that according to existentialism, existence precedes essence, and then you have to say, and this means, then you have to give some explanation of the concept or the phrase. What does existence precedes essence mean? What does that mean? Put it in your own words. What does that mean? Existence precedes essence. Just let me know the meaning of that phrase. Okay, so you must be present before you can have interest in hobbies. Let's back up a little bit. Tell me what the word essence means, please. It's sort of along the right lines, but interest in hobbies is like a little bit too minimalist of a way of talking about what an essence is. Okay, so something's essence is its defining characteristics. It's defining essential attributes of something. According to existentialism, we create our essence. It's not something that we are given from any outside force or source. It's something that you create as an individual through your own free will and through your choices. Now, your essence includes all the basic facts about you. Interests and hobbies, Brian, is just a scratching the surface. What about, are you religious or not? Are you a conservative? Are you a liberal? Are you going to get married? Or are you going to be a literature person or a math person? Are you going to be like an outdoors type? Are you going to be like a city person? All the different things about you that uniquely characterize you. Your taste in food, fashion, music, film, what you study, all of those things, they are the essence that you have. According to existentialism, you first start this life as a blank slate and you don't have an essence, but that essence gets created over time by the choices that you make. So you create that essence of yourself, and they insist that you take total responsibility for it. Since it's yours and since it's your project and it's something you create, you also have to have total accountability for it. So you should not ever say, why am I like this? I don't know why I'm like this. That's something that you should never say according to existentialism, because you are the reason that you're like that, because you've chosen to be. When people try and say it's because of something else, not me, that's bad faith, which is another question that we could talk about more if you want later. But that's basically it. You create your own essence. Nobody else does. It's because you're a human. You have free will. It gives you a greater dignity than other things in the universe that don't have any free will or ability to author their own identity. Okay, so good. Then, William, the objection to physicalism, which involved the idea that a man may know nothing about brain processes. Good. So JJC Smart is a physicalist. He thinks that everything is just made out of matter, and your consciousness, your experiences that you have, which he calls sensations, they're really just brain processes, which is physical. So everything's physical. But having said that, he knows there are dualists that would disagree with him. And so what he tries to do is consider the dualists' objections to physicalism. And one of those objections is this one that you're talking about, William, in question 66. So someone may say in reply to the claim that sensations are brain processes, they may say, no, they are not, because a person may know nothing to talk about something, but they're not able to talk about what? Help me. Explain question 66, answer. The objection to physicalism, which is saying that a man may know nothing about brain processes, so what? What's the point of saying that? That a man may not know anything about what is happening in the brain or the processes of the brain. To what end does a person make that comment? A man may know nothing about brain processes. I'm asking you now, so what? What's the answer to my so what question? So what that a man may know nothing about brain processes? Why are you saying that? What's the reason for pointing that out? What conclusion is he trying to derive from the statement that a person may not know anything about brain processes? A person may know nothing about brain processes, but by contrast, what are they able to discuss? Caesar, you saying, just because you don't know how your brain works, that does not mean that it doesn't work. No. Okay, William, a person can talk about their sensations, correct. A person can talk about their sensations and they can't talk about the brain process that's supposed to be behind it or that is equivalent to it. So think of like the last movie that you watched or something. If somebody asked you, what was it like? You could say to them, it was cool, it was funny, it was a little bit boring in the middle, but it really got better at the end. You know, anything you would say about how it was to watch it would be you talking about the sensation of watching it. But if your friend asked you how was the movie, you would never be able to say in terms of my brain how it was. Like, so you couldn't be like, oh, well, for the first half, there was like limited activity in the frontal cortex. And then in the middle part of the movie, neurons over here in this ganglion part of the brain started to fire. Anyway, so you couldn't say anything about what's going on in your brain. You don't really know what's happening in your brain at any given time. But you're able to talk about your experiences. That's no problem. So someone might argue that they can't be the same thing if we can't talk about them both with the same degree of ease. That's the objection. How could sensations really be brain processes if we don't know what is happening in our brain, but it's easy to talk about our experiences? The physicalist says they're the same thing. And the objection goes, no, they're not the same thing. Because if they were, I should be able to tell you what's happening in my brain, which I cannot do. So since I can talk about experiences, but I have no idea what's going on in the brain, the argument could be given that they must not be the same thing, actually. That an experience you have is something different from just a brain process. Okay, good. Thank you very much. And so a few other things. A dualist may claim they know nothing about brain processes, but know how to explain a sensation, therefore they are different. But Smart says they are the same thing, exactly. And same with you, Brian. If we can't talk about brain process, then they are two different things. Good. William, and as it turns out, sensations and brain processes are different terms for the same concept. Yeah, that's how he replies. The subsequent question, 67, it asks about his response to that, which if you guys want, we could go over that. But he uses the morning and the evening star thing, and he says there can be two different labels or terms for one thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be two things. So you can have two descriptions of one object, like the morning and the evening star are just two different descriptions or terms for the one object in the sky. And so he says brain process and sensation are kind of similar in that way. They're two different terms and they are somewhat differently described, but they're actually only about one thing. They are just co-referential to one phenomenon, which is a brain process. Okay, so Lily, you're saying, explain why Singer says that the problem of global hunger is not a problem of scarcity of resources. Okay, good. So Peter Singer is saying that we should do something like to donate money or whatever to the poor, the global international poor, because we have wealth beyond what's necessary, and there are people in the world that don't have enough wealth to even meet the needs of food and clothing and shelter. So why can't we help them a little bit? And if we did, it would save lives, but it wouldn't even really hurt us very much. Now, after he, that's his big position, but some people would say there's nothing to be done, actually, because there's never going to be enough resources for all the people in the world. Therefore, there's inevitably going to be shortages. When you have too many people and not enough food for everyone, someone's not going to get as much food as they need. But he does not agree with that. He says it's actually not about scarce resources. It's about waste and poor distribution of available resources. So he says we actually could basically have enough food for everybody if we made more efficient use of the food that is there, if we did not waste as much, and if we didn't rely so much on animal agriculture, which creates a lot of waste and loss of consumable resources to human beings. Because you basically have to divert a lot of consumable resources to cattle and other livestock to bring them up to market production as meat. If we didn't eat as much meat, then there would be so much savings in terms of net consumable resources that could make a huge impact on the overall amount of food that's available for everybody in the world. So he says that it's not that it's impossible for us to produce enough food. It's because we waste a lot of it and we make poor inefficient use of the available resources that we could produce. Okay, so he won't concede the point that this is a problem that cannot be solved because of inevitable scarcity. Okay then, so Bridger, classical account of knowledge. There are 3 conditions to the classical account of knowledge. First thing is just say what those are. So what are the 3 basic requirements for knowledge, according to the Greek thinking of the ancient days? It's something, something, something. What's knowledge? 3 conditions. Justified true belief. Good. Now, we need to say more, though. What is the definition of each one of those 3 words? So you can't just, anytime in philosophy, you got to give explanations. Because in philosophy, what you're being evaluated on is the nuance of your understanding, not just your memorization. You're being graded on the ability of you to understand the complex, nuanced argument and to reveal all the complexity and all the nuance. So justified true belief is just the start. You got to say now, what do these words mean? What does each word mean? And then you can even give an example. But let's just get to the definitions first. So starting with, I guess, I don't know, any of them though. I would do it in the order of truth, belief, justification. But what's the meaning of each one? Okay, so I see you here, William. Justification, good reasons or good evidence to support a belief. That's right. So having facts or reasons that you're basing the belief on means you've got justification. Truth, when a proposition matches the facts of reality. Yes, that's when a statement is true. Like if I tell you that I'm wearing glasses, that's true, because that's real. If I tell you I'm wearing a hat, that's not true, because that's not really happening right now. So a statement can be true or false depending on whether it lines up with the facts or not. If I told you that I was 100 years old, that's just a falsehood. That's a lie. That's a statement, but that's not what really happened. If I told you I was born in the 80s, that is a true statement because it's what I'm saying, but it's not just what I'm saying, it's what did occur. So a proposition being true depends on whether it matches the real facts, okay? And then belief is just when a person thinks that a statement is true. So you believe, I guess, that campus is closed. You think that's true because you've been informed that it's closed, and of course, you have no reason to think otherwise. So belief is thinking something's true, but two people can have different beliefs about the same statement. I could tell you that I think the world is a sphere, and I hope you agree, but there are some people out there, sad to say, that don't agree with that, and they believe that it's a flat disk or something else. So there's only one truth, but there could be two different beliefs. If that's the case, then one person's just wrong. Now, if you got knowledge, the claim is that all three of these things have to all be there. You have to think something's true, but that's not enough. It has to really actually be true, so you got to get it right. And then the third part is that you'd have to have evidence for that belief. If you've got all three conditions, then you know. But if even one of them is not there, then that's not knowledge. And let me just give you an example where 2 out of 3 is not enough, or even 1 out of 3. So if a person fills in a multiple choice quiz, which asks them, when was the US founded? And they filled in the bubble which says 1850, then they don't know when the US was founded because their belief is not true. That's a belief if they had it when they filled it in, but it's a false belief because it's not correct that the US was founded in 1850. So that's not one that has knowledge about the statement. Take another example. The student fills in 1776, which is true, but they were guessing. They're like, what is 1776? I have no idea. I'm just going to randomly fill that in. They got it right, so I guess at that time they had a correct opinion about what the right answer was, but they didn't know the answer because they didn't have justification behind it. So who actually knows the answer on the quiz? It's the person who fills in the correct bubble, but also when they do it, it's like they're thinking, well, why is that correct? Oh, because I remember reading that the Constitutional Convention was in like 1775, and Articles of Confederation were developed at that time, and so the dates, they have them clear in their mind. And so having the justification means that it's not just a random lucky coincidence that you filled in something right, but that you actually knew it. So knowledge requires not just getting things right, but getting things right for the right reasons, that you actually knew based on evidence that that would be the right answer. Okay, so that's the justified true belief classical account of knowledge, which Gettier himself thinks has some problems and he criticizes it. But that's what it was. Okay, so that's another one. We're getting closer to the end of our time, but I think, okay, I see some more up there. Tragedy of the Commons from Garrett Hardin. Yeah, Garrett Hardin's Tragedy of the Commons. Okay, basically he just said, when there's a public resource, something that anyone can take from, and there's no restrictions on the access to it, it's going to not work out because everyone's going to take from it, but nobody's going to do anything to sustain it because it's not their personal property. That means that it's going to be overutilized and poorly maintained, which will cause it to be quickly destroyed. But private resources, he says, that does not happen because the private owner is not going to overuse their own product because they don't want to lose it. And they're also going to do what they can to maintain it because it's theirs and they've invested their wealth into it. And it reflects on them as the owner how well they take care of their property. So if an acre of land was given to the public for farming, he says everyone would bring their animals to it, so it would be overgrazed, and nobody would clean up and take care of it because it's also not their private property. So you'd have too many animals, not enough maintenance, and it would get ruined. But if an acre of land was owned by a private farmer, then he's going to make sure that it's not overloaded with animals and that it is well maintained because he's placed his investment into it. So he thinks that public resources are always going to fail for those basic reasons. And that's why he says we should not be supportive of them, even if they're for like a noble cause, like the World Food Bank. So he thinks that the World Food Bank would be another example of a commons, whereby all members of the third world that needed it would take from it, as a commons does, but would not do anything to wean themselves off of it by becoming more independent and self-sufficient. So it would just create a larger problem for the next generation when the population sizes of those that have drawn from the commons have become unsustainably large, at which time the commons would have to be dismantled, but now you are failing to address the needs of an even larger group. So that's his basic problem there. Now, what's next? Up there I see Parfit's example of the stranger who told you about his cancer diagnosis. Derek Parfit says that if your desires are fulfilled, well, one of the theories of self-interest that he presented was the desire fulfillment theory. That theory just says that fulfilling your desires is what makes your life go better. So the more desires that you fulfill, the better the life is. But he wants to sort of narrow that down a little bit by adding this detail, that it's not just any desires that matter to how well your life is going, but only the ones that relate to your own projects and your own goals. So the stranger in this scenario tells you that they have cancer after you have a friendly conversation. Then they just go on their own separate way from you. And in the situation, it was said that imagine you feel like you wish them well. You know, your hope and your desire is that they beat that disease. So, but you only met him the one time, and that was just a chance meeting. Suppose that somewhere in the world years pass and they did beat the disease. So it happened. What you wanted to happen did happen. That's a fulfilled desire. But he thinks that common sense tells you this doesn't really impact how well the person's life is going, because though that is a fulfilled desire, it's not one that has anything to do with the individual's own projects and goals. So it's irrelevant to the quality of their life, even though it's a fulfilled desire. So which desires do matter to how well your life is going? He says just the desires that are revolving around your own projects and goals that basically you started. So a desire that a stranger recover from cancer, even if it comes true, isn't relevant according to the success version of the theory, which he thinks is the best one. So that example, Nelly, of question 82, the stranger with the cancer, that's to, he thinks, show that the success version is better than the unrestricted version of the desire fulfillment theory. So that would be his reason for that example. Now, Brian, supervenience physicalism. So we're really low on time, and so this will be the last one I get to talk a little bit about. So I'm just going to really just kind of summarize it as briefly as I can. If you had a big dot matrix picture, it would be an image made out of a bunch of little dots. Dots of ink, or on a computer screen, pixels. The pixels combine and they form the big picture, or the ink dots combine and they form the big picture. The word global feature just means some large-scale aspect of the composite image. So like right now on your screen, you're looking at a global, you're looking at a dot matrix basically. And so like, I don't know, this eraser right here could be considered a global feature of this dot matrix that you're looking at. Why is this eraser displayed on your screen? Well, because the pixels on your screen are being given the instructions by the software and the hardware of the computer to illuminate that patch on the resolution of your device with those kind of pixel coordinates. So anyway, the global features of the composite are just the result of the little dots or pixels arranged in a given order. Now, the physical universe is also like a dot matrix because it's a big thing containing lots of objects and events, but they're all built out of little bits, which in this case are atoms. So if there are two dot matrices which have got the same exact dot pattern, then they have to have all the same global features. So all of you guys watching this lecture on all your different devices, you're all seeing the same image on your screen because your image on the screen is the instructions given by the computing system in terms of which pixels to project on that screen to display this image. So when the dots are the same, the global features are the same. The same would be true in a physical case. So if there was another universe and it had the same pattern of atoms building things as ours, then it would have all the same global features. So there would be a copy of everything, a copy even of you, and it would go all the way down to your consciousness. So the thoughts and feelings that you're having could be duplicated physically in a closed physical system which had exactly equivalent atomic facts. Okay? So there's this like side-by-side comparison of two matrices that's relevant to the answer. You would give the case where two matrices with the same order of dots have the same global features. Likewise, two universes which have the same atoms would have the same phenomena at every higher level of reality, including aspects of consciousness. So that's what it means to say that everything supervenes on the physical. Everything's made out of atoms. Consciousness is too. And as special and unique as your consciousness may seem, it's something that could be reproduced in theory if there was another physical system with the exact same physical basis. Okay, so I guess that's really about it for today for our review session, part 2. I think we've covered a lot of good ground, and it seems like everyone's in decent shape and has some good preparation underway. So like I'll just say once again, thanks everyone for all your work all semester. It's been a very different kind of semester for all of us, but we're coming out of it, I think, strong, and there's better days ahead for sure for everybody. Yeah, your guys' lives are just getting started, so you got a lot to look forward to, and so I'm really wishing you guys well on this class and then beyond. But just remember, Tuesday at 1:30 is the day and time of the final. Be ready to receive my message to you on that day through Blackboard. And thank you guys, Jessica and everybody else. I really appreciate all the kind words This weekend, as I finish the papers, I'll definitely be telling you when they're ready. So probably tomorrow night or early on Sunday, I'll let you know, and then you can all just, whenever you're ready, ask me for the paper grade. And I'll tell you that and anything else you want to know about your standing in the class and stuff like that. But okay, guys, well, thanks a lot. It's nothing to be sad about. You got a lot to look forward to, but our class has been very interesting, and I really appreciate all your work, and it's been a great group. So I'll miss you, but not forever, because we're all going to be back in campus eventually, if not in the fall for sure, I'm sure in the spring. So be in touch, and let me know if you need anything, and I'll see you guys soon, and we'll be talking over the internet on this weekend. Okay, bye-bye. Take care.